Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How are you?
Oh, it's another day in paradise. How are you?
Good.
That is an adorable dog, by the way. Hi.
She's a
What's its
handful.
name?
Potato.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful name. Today I'm here with Cynthia Wong, the founder of Life Raft Treats. As you all know, I am horribly addicted to their not fried chicken. It is my kryptonite. And right off the bat, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, about Life Raft, and how you got inspired and started that whole journey?
Sure. I was a pastry chef for many years in a lot of restaurants in the Southeast. And after I had kids, I just kind of couldn't really take restaurants and restaurant life and a lot of people who work in restaurants seriously anymore. Because it was like, I had a kid and I had all this other stuff, and it was just like, yes, chef, no chef. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about this anymore. And then I felt like I had kind of aged out of it as well. It's kind of young person's career choice to a certain extent. So I started Life Raft Treats in 2018. Mostly just, it was just something to do other than be in a restaurant. And I didn't really have much of a plan other than I felt like I had been backed into a corner. And so I was just going to do
Wow.
something. And as we went along, I was totally shocked to see that it actually worked. Because I was like, who wants some totally weird ice cream? Who's gonna buy this stuff? And it took off and it just started to work. And I was really lucky and really grateful for that. But mostly, I had I feel like people sort of tell you to do what you love for a living. And I think that can kind of be the wrong approach sometimes. I think that's a great approach when you're younger, but at a certain point, you need to start thinking about having a job or a career that suits what you want your life to be like, unless you want your entire life to work. And so the ice cream company started to move in that direction, and it became my way of kind of getting control back over my life and my own time again.
Oh, wow. So I guess you could say it's a really personal adventure for you.
Yeah, totally. It was literally my life raft. It was the way I was going to save my sanity, and not work on holidays and weekends and, you know, day and night endlessly for somebody else.
So is that where the name came from?
Yeah, it was like, it's actually from a line in Mad Men. It's when Betty Draper tells Dawn that she's leaving him for Henry, and he's totally shocked. He thinks that he's the one who's going to leave her, and she's like, "No, I'm marrying Henry Francis or whatever his name is." And he's like, "This whole time you've been building yourself a life raft." And so to me, that was my thing. It was like, yeah, I'm here and I'm doing this job to the best of my capabilities, but I'm gonna get on this thing and go away in a little bit.
That's awesome. That's like actually really cool. I feel like a lot of people would find that really inspirational.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to work for other people at a certain point in your life.
I feel you there.
Yeah.
Um, what inspired you to get into the culinary world? Is that something you were like raised in? Did you have parents that loved to cook, or is that something you kind of ventured down the path of alone?
My parents were really, really good cooks, but they definitely did not want me to get into the culinary world. My dad was a doctor, and he was like, he's a very typical sort of like Asian parent, Asian immigrant parent, where he was like, education is the most important thing. We've laid out this pathway for you. If you just take these steps, it's going to be this very secure, comfortable life with a job that everyone respects. And my two older sisters kind of did that to a certain extent. And I was like, I'm too cool for school. Maybe because I was the youngest and they at that point were probably really tired and didn't really keep their thumb on me as much. I was like, no, I can't imagine working in like an academic setting or a really serious setting, where you flub something and someone gets the death penalty, or you flub something and someone dies from the surgery. Whereas, if it's ice cream or food, it's like, okay, it's ruined. We're going to throw it away and start all over again. And I always wanted to be a baker, even when I was a little kid. Everything I played with, I would turn into some sort of bakery scenario. Like if I was playing with Play-Doh, I would make like little cakes and pies out of Play-Doh and then try to sell them to my parents and stuff. And they were like, remember, this is only a hobby. And now that I've done this, I've had this career and I'm running this small business. I say the same thing to my boys. I'm like, remember, food is just for fun. Don't do this for a living. They're like, what? Why not? I'm like, because it's hard. So yeah.
That's just crazy to think about. So what do your parents think now that you've actually like built some success around your name and your brand?
At a certain point, they're just like, okay, fine, this is what you're gonna do. If you're gonna do it right. And I was like, okay. But as it's kind of started to get traction and we got picked up by Whole Foods and it became like a real business, they were like, wow, okay. And they've been really, really, really like just so surprisingly supportive, both
Awesome.
financially and spiritually. And it's been really nice to see.
That's really cool. I'm really happy for you.
Yeah.
So outside of that background, then what really inspired you to create such crazy things like not fried chicken?
I spent some time in restaurants where everything was really serious and everyone was just like, it was like the bear, but
Hmm.
the first part of the bear where the guy's like, you should go kill yourself, you're totally worthless, blah, blah, blah. I spent a lot of time in restaurants kind of like that. And it was just so serious. And it was just like, hey man, this is food. It's gonna be like it's future poops. Like we can't take it this seriously, And at that point too, when I started making not fried chicken, I was so burned out of restaurants and restaurant life and being a pastry chef and the things on the plate and all this other stuff. And I just wanted to have some fun again. And I wanted to laugh about something again. I wanted food to be joyful. And when I came with not fried chicken, and the first time I served it to customers, some people were like, "Oh God, what is that? Like, is there raw chicken in there?" I'm like, "No, I'm not serving you raw chicken." And then the people who got it would take a bite and just start laughing because it's totally ridiculous. And that was like the greatest thing for someone to, get out of their everyday sort of existence and problems to such a degree that they can bite a piece of crispy ice cream and like laugh for a minute. That's like the best thing to me. It's like the biggest compliment.
Yeah, I guess it is a little bit of a jolt to reality again when you bite into something like that.
Yeah, and the ice cream looks kind of like meat too, so it's kind of like, what is this? Yeah.
I've posted about it so many times, and a lot of people really think I'm eating raw fried chicken.
Yeah,
And I'm just
totally.
like, I'm not that crazy. Like, who do you think I am, guys?
Right, totally.
What other inspirations do you have? Because like I noticed I've tried your lunch trays, and that's like awesome. And I was really curious about that too.
Just funny things, just making things that are funny and fun. I also really like that 50s nostalgia where it was the housewife in her dress with her apron, and dad comes home from work, and the children are well groomed, and everything's perfect. And we have all these magical appliances, but underneath it all, there's a fight for civil rights, and everything was just like kind of terrible. But they put this little glossy veneer on it. I was kind of obsessed with that, like the food, and this whole idea that everything's convenient and perfect and lovely. And the little lunch trays, the frozen dinners. We call them the hungry dads, or for Father's Day it was this kind of joke that the American dad, there's this sort of idea perpetuated that they're totally hapless and helpless and can't do the laundry and can't feed the kids and can't cook anything. And so it's like the frozen dinner, it's like the hungry man. But I thought it was funny because my husband is like a much better parent than I am, and is a really good cook and does all the cooking, and it's just not like that at all. So I just thought that was kind of funny.
Hell yeah. Shout out to him. Sounds like he puts in the work.
Yeah, totally.
If someone was really inspired by you, what advice would you give them if they wanted to follow down a similar path and really try to break the mold and breathe some life into the industry again, and make it so it's a lot more enjoyable personally, not as mundane as you've led on to it to be?
To really stick to their guns, and if you have something unique and you believe in it, don't let anyone dissuade you from doing those things that you want. Because when we first got started, I was really into the novelties like the sandwiches and the little bars on a stick and all that kind of thing. Because having spent so many years as a pastry chef, you start to compose things where it's like you want a texture with another texture and a flavor, and you balance out the acidity with the sweetness, and it's hard to do that in like a pint or a scoop, but you can do that with like a little cookie with ice cream in the middle or something like that, or you can make it look like something different, or you can tell this little story. And people didn't get it at first. Like the first time we ever went out with the cart and I had the sign with like the pictures of the food and little notes about it. Some lady came up and she goes, "What is that? Is that sushi?" I'm like, no, it's not sushi. But and like people didn't get it. And it would have been really easy to kind of like turn tail and say, okay, we're gonna make cookies and cream ice cream scoops, and that's what we're gonna do. And a lot of times in the very beginning, parents would come up and say, "Oh, my kid's not gonna eat any of this." And it's like, your kid's not gonna eat ice cream with cornflakes on it? It's delicious. Like I hate this idea that there's like kids food and then like adults food. And then a lot of people were saying, oh, you need to make something for kids, or you need to make like vegan ice cream and these things that I didn't want to do. And I'm a really, really stubborn person. Like once I dig my heels in, I'm never gonna be dissuaded unless it's of my own accord. And I just stuck to it, and I stuck to the path, and I just kind of kept plowing and didn't let myself get discouraged. Um,
Yeah.
So really, if people have something that is unique and dear to them and tells a story about their life or how they view the world, stick with it. Don't let market forces tell you that you should dumb it down or do something different. Just do that, refine it as you go along, but stick to your guns, be yourself, let your food, your products be themselves.
Would you like to elaborate on any other challenges you faced when you were starting up?
Um, it's ice cream in particular is just a very expensive industry to get into. The machinery is really expensive. Like we are talking about $35,000 for an ice cream machine.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah,
I
20,
didn't
25,000.
expect that.
Yeah, $25,000 for a blast freezer. Um, just things cost that much at that scale. And once you get to that scale, the next scale up is things cost $100,000. And so that part can be, you can get really discouraged really easily by just kind of looking at it, because you always feel when you have a small business, you're looking at this giant mountain, you're like, how in the world am I going to get to that peak? But you find that you somehow get yourself up there, you drag yourself up there, and you're at the top of that peak, and then suddenly there's this other peak, and you're like, oh God, there's another peak. But you just, as you probably well know, you just keep dragging yourself along and you just do it. So that part has been really hard, and you kind of feel like every time you solve a part of the puzzle, you turn around and you're like, oh God, there's so much more to solve. And it always feels like that. But if you have the stomach for it and you like that kind of thing, it's actually kind of great. I didn't think that I did. I thought that I was more risk averse than I am, but as it turns out, I am not risk averse. So
Yeah, that's just crazy. Then to backtrack just a little, is there any like professional like qualifications you'd suggest someone to have if they wanted to get into the culinary arts? Or do you think someone could just, graduate high school and just kind of dive into it?
I think that if people are going to get into the culinary arts, they should seek out like a community college kind of program, one that's fast and inexpensive, where you just learn the basics, like how to hold a knife, how to sharpen a knife, how to cut the veg, like the very bare basic of things. That's better if someone just shows you, which honestly at this point too, you could probably YouTube the whole thing if you wanted to. There's so much information out there. I would really discourage most people from going to a really expensive culinary school, because
Really?
it's like 90, $100,000, and you're
Wow.
gonna get, yeah, like the really, like, the CIA, I think, is somewhere around in that range, something crazy like that, with all the housing, everything put together. And you're going to get out, and someone might pay you 15, $17 an hour to get started. So that's a tough road to hoe. In this industry though, if you want to get started and you don't know anything and you need to start, if you just show up on time and you're willing to listen and you try to be a sponge, someone will take you under their wing every time. It's like, in this industry, there are some real characters and some real pieces of work, but generally speaking, the thing I've encountered all the time is that when you find that spark in someone young, you want to nurture it. Almost everyone in that industry is like that.
So what are some signs in your opinion of like a good mentor, a good teacher, and then versus, some signs of a bad one?
A good mentor, I feel, is someone who wants you to prove yourself in the right kind of way, not in the sense of, oh, I'll go pick up after your dog and get your dry clean, all that stuff, but someone
Mhm.
who wants to see that you're going to put the time in and that you're going to absorb the lessons and you're going to do the work. And a lot of times the work is really uninteresting. In one of the restaurants I worked at, there's this fantastic young lady who's gone on to have her own really great career. Came in and she's all really nicely dressed, and she had really, like, made a point of coming there and had her resume printed out. None of it had any kind of coloring experience at all, but she really wanted to get a start. And she came in, she handed me a resume, and I looked at it and looked at her. I was like, okay, when are you gonna start? She was like, what? I was like, I can't pay you anything right now, but you can come in and hang out, and then we'll see where it goes. And then she worked for me, and at the next restaurant I went to, became one of my assistant pastry chefs, and she was awesome. And
That's awesome.
she showed up and she applied herself, and that was the thing.
That's really cool. I don't know if anyone's asked you about this yet. I saw you guys' Instagram post the other day about someone kind of ripping you guys off a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to ask, you've really pushed the forefront in terms of actually making food art. And I just want to know, art's a really hard industry in any industry, people are always building off of each other and referencing
Yeah,
previous artists.
for sure.
In the food industry, where do you draw the line then between an original creation and then just blatant plagiarism? And is there a respectful way that you can, reference someone's creation almost identically, even, or even just a little less, but still like get a blessing from that previous creator?
You just come out and say it. You just come out and say, this was inspired by this person's thing, and I tried to make mine a little bit different by doing this. You don't present it to the world as something that you did on your own. I mean, that's a thing. And the thing that made me so, and like, just was totally got under my skin about the people in DC, was that they had really carefully researched the term not fried chicken and how the term itself was trademarked, and they tiptoed around that and never used the words not fried chicken, even in like the description. Not, I mean, especially not calling it that. And so they did this whole thing where they were like, well, what we did was not legally actionable, and it's out there, so whatever. And it was like, come on, dude. It's one thing if there's like a silicone mold out there that looks like a drumstick and you can just buy it and fill it. Okay, fine. But this is
Mhm.
all like hand shaped, hand piped. Like, there's a lot of technical knowledge and scientific information that goes into making something look like a piece of not fried chicken, and then, dipping that ice cream into chocolate at the right temperature and the whole thing. And their version of it just looks so bad. And that was the thing to me too. It was just like, you didn't even do a good job of it. Like, if you're gonna do this, make it really good. But even like more than that, like, come up with your own idea. Like, I would have been less irritated if they had made something look like a wing or a cutlet or anything else other than a really bad version of what I make. So I think that, with anything, it's like there's respectful ways to do things. And the main thing is to, make an effort of it, make it a really good product, and then to just, tip your hat, and that's it.
Well, it's good to know you have a really chill perspective too, because yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are inspired by you, but there is always a right and wrong way to go about things.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and it's like everyone is riffing off each other in some way or the other, like, the silicone molds that I buy have bought to make the peach bombs that we make. That was, I can't remember who it was, but it was one of the European chef guys who was like making peaches and cherries by hand without the silicone mold, and then licensed the idea of the mold to Silicone Mart that makes the silicone molds. And so it's like,
Oh wow.
yeah, it's a mold. If somebody else makes a peach and makes it look like that, okay, it's a mold. I get it. You don't have to say anything about me. It's a product that already exists that you're using. I get it.
Hmm. Your peach bombs, by the way, are the bomb. I
Thank
love
you.
those. My girlfriend and I are like, we're hooked.
Oh, thank you.
In a more positive note, then, are there any other artist, any brand that you'd want to work with? I don't know if you've ever thought about that or if you've ever already done that, but
Um, there's anything that comes to mind, but I think if I took like 5 minutes to think about it, I'd come up with like a really long list, because there are so many people out there that do what they do in their own industries or even in this industry, like so incredibly well. You know, there's people that I look at their work and I'm just like, God, I wish, Jesus, wish I could do that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But nothing comes to mind right now.
Okay. I wanted to touch back with your background a little and just ask, if there's anything you've ever done that incorporates your heritage and then mix that, with your artistry. I'm not sure if there's even a way, but I feel like you might have had some ideas if you already haven't had some creations.
Some of the there's a couple of things. There's not a lot of influence because Chinese Asian food, it's not a really dessert heavy cuisine. I like a lot of the tropical fruits and things like that. The main thing I think that would probably pop up as sort of one of those heritage things is we make for Jackrabbit Philly here in Charleston, we make these really delicious lemon cookies, and it's got dried lemon peel in it, which is like dried orange peel is like a really big component of Chinese cooking. Like there's this crazy, I don't even know how to describe it, just this crazy underground world of like dried orange peels. And the more finely preserved and ancient orange peel, the more it costs. And it's like this stuff costs like so much. It's like it's as much as jewelry basically, but it's
Oh my gosh.
peel because it has such a flavor. So we kind of use that, but use lemons instead and try to create that same flavor with like lemon peel. So that's in a cookie. And then the ice cream that's in that sandwich is Hong Kong milk tea. So we make condensed milk and then we make an ice cream base with black tea steeped into it and then make that ice cream. So it's like a really very to me like very Chinese flavored dessert, which is hard to describe to people who don't grow up. But like the owner of Jackrabbit Philly is Chinese and he's like, oh my God, it's milk tea and preserved peel. I'm like, yeah, and so when I
Yeah.
do things like that, it is really fun.
It sounds delicious.
Yeah, it's good. I should send you some. I'll send you some.
If you could, oh my gosh.
Yeah, totally.
Hell yeah. I am beyond excited right now. Kind of in regards with everything we've talked about, I'm just wondering now, like, what are some of the hardest creations you've made? And then what are some of your favorites, some of the easiest ones? I know there's probably a different skill level involved with every single one, but I'm just kind of curious.
The bananas are pretty easy. It's a mold and it's just not that hard to make them. Like you dip them and you put cocoa powder on them and they look like overripe bananas and they're just really funny. People see them and they laugh. They're like, what is that? So those aren't too bad. We did cherry bombs once and they were a total nightmare. Because Hannah, my assistant pastry chef, assistant ice cream chef, whatever her nomenclature should be, she is so good at the colors. Like, so all the colors you see, the peaches and the tinting on the peaches, that's all her. And she
Wow.
made she made the coating for the cherries, and it was so close to the color of the sorbet and so close to the color of the cherry. I couldn't tell where the sorbet was and where the shell was. And so it just became this big giant disaster of just everything kind of melting and just not knowing where anything really was
Oh
sticking and
no.
stuff. Um, and there have been some things that I wanted to do that I don't quite know how to do yet. And then things that I did figure out, like probably about in the first month of business, I wanted to make an ice cream sandwich look like a sandwich, but I hadn't quite figured out how to do that yet. And then last year I figured it out and I was like, yay, I did it. And then I was like, oh, this is a lot of work. This is kind of hard. There's so many steps. Um, but yeah, most of it, we've figured out most of like the kind of technical aspect of these things. Mass producing them is another thing entirely, but
I bet. How hard is it to really nail the flavor? Like you mentioned the banana, that banana ice cream is some of my favorite I've ever had, period ever. And like I could go on about all your food endlessly, but I just,
thank you.
making anything flavored off of the real thing, has always seemed to be just a huge challenge in any industry. Cause like, everyone's used to having like gummies or medicine or just other drinks that are supposed to be this and that flavor. And you could
Oh
tell
yeah,
it's just not even
yeah.
close.
We don't use any artificial flavors. If it's a banana ice cream, we make it with bananas. It's actually a recipe that comes from Dana Cree's ice cream book called Hello, My Name is Ice Cream. And it's the most brilliant recipe ever, because up until that point, I'd always like kind of mushed up bananas and put them in ice cream, but it gets like this really weird, like weird texture. It's like starchy and kind of weird. And she was the person who came up with a recipe where you get really, really ripe bananas, like they're like mush basically. And when you like peel the skin off, they just kind of go out of the peel, get them to that
Mhm.
stage of ripeness, and you steep them in the milk and cream overnight. And then you fish them out the next day and make the ice cream.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's why the banana ice cream is so good, because you don't have any of that weird, like kind of starchy texture. You just have the essence of the banana.
Wow. I am grateful to hear that. That's really cool. And well, I guess my moms are right too, in terms of always using super ripe bananas to cook with.
Yeah, like you want them so ripe, like you don't even want to touch them without gloves on. You're just like, oh God, so ripe.
Do you have any plans in terms of scaling up and like getting your food into like a Walmart freezer or something? Like, how hard is
Um,
that for you?
really hard. At a certain point, and we're kind of having these conversations, my husband and I and our team. At what point do we try to have some of these items manufactured by a co-packer? And at what point do we try to raise a ton of capital and basically build like a dairy plant? Right now it's very artisan, small scale. Our ice cream machine makes 24 quarts, which is 6 gallons at a time, which is like very, in terms of real production, like it's like a toy machine practically. It's
Oh, wow.
very small yield. So I would really like to scale it up. If nothing else, having the chicken everywhere, I think, is a closer to viable prospect than a lot of the other items. But we do have our eyes on a shop front for next year. We found the spot. We just have to kind of like iron some things out, but we're going to try to have our first shop next year.
Do you think upping production like that, having a shop would help you lower prices for your other distributors like Goldbelly?
Um, yes, we are also looking at our own fulfillment, because Goldbelly is basically a portal and a shop front, and they manage the relationship with UPS. They, put all the information into where we just press a button and it creates like the labels.
Mm-hmm.
And they deal with the customers and the customer service. And they're kind of, more than anything else, they're like a portal for the vendors like us, and a shipping consolidator. So if you ship something overnight without like a large volume of boxes that you're shipping, it's like $250 just to ship something overnight to like New York or California. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy expensive, and especially since the box is heavy and has dry ice in it and everything like that. So when people see the price on Goldbelly, they're like, what? Why does it cost this much for 9 pieces of ice cream? It's like, well, they get 50% of that price for managing what they manage and being the portal and having the reach that they have. Um, so if we can start doing our own fulfillment in terms of taking over the whole process ourselves, we can definitely lower that price.
Okay.
Of
Yeah, I had to ask because in one of my viral videos about the not fried chicken, the biggest complaint everyone was like, "Oh my God, $100 ice cream," and I'm just like, I kept trying to reassure people it's worth it, but the thing is, obviously, not everyone has the means. So
No, totally. I mean, and Goldbelly is very much a food site for extravagant food gifts or rich people. And if
yeah,
you have ice cream, if you have the ice cream in Charleston, the not fried chicken is $5 a piece.
what?
You know, a bucket of 6 pieces is $25 in Charleston, because we don't have to put it in a box with dry ice and get UPS can pick it up and have it overnighted and shipped to you and the whole thing. So, I think that Amazon has ruined everyone for thinking that shipping is just free and that it's not built into some kind of cost to the consumer somewhere. So that is definitely something we have to battle.
Yeah, that's some good perspective to have, and I hope people take that away because if they can save up, it's worth the money in my opinion.
Um, there's
Um,
there's a 20% off sale that ends today. 20% off of everything on Life Raft on Goldbelly today.
yeah, it's
So
8:16 right now, so if you can take advantage of it, hell yeah.
we
Um, and Gold Belly does do a lot of sales throughout the year,
do.
so rest assured. I just want to know, you kind of mentioned it, but are there any other crazy cool ideas that you got in the works that you're just thinking about that you are willing to share? I know as an artist, as a businesswoman, you gotta keep something secret, and there's
Mhm.
competition clearly that has it out for you in some ways.
Um, Nothing that I can really reveal. Just that we're gonna do a new and improved Wong Duckin for Thanksgiving, and we're gonna have some really nice frozen bûche de Noël for Christmas as well.
Okay.
Um, we didn't do bûches for a couple of years. People were like, "Why don't you have a bûche?" I'm like, "God, I don't know why we don't. We need to do this." So yeah, and the bûche this year is going to be really delicious, dark, spicy gingerbread cake, mascarpone ice
Yo.
cream, and brandied cherries, and then chocolate over the whole top. And so it's gonna be delicious.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. I tell you what. And I may or may not include this one because I know you have a brand to maintain, but I am a fashion designer, and one of the people that put me on in the fashion industry for my name was Tommy Chong. So I kind of got to ask, do you ever plan to do a cannabis infused ice cream treat?
Absolutely. The minute,
Absolutely. Okay.
absolutely, the minute it's legal in South Carolina, like I'm gonna watch the legislation like a hawk, and I will be prepared that the minute it's legal, we will have weed fried chicken out there.
Oh, God bless.
Like the minute it happens, and like just absolutely, I'm 100% pro legalization. You know,
Awesome.
I think that it's way past time for it to be legalized, and not just legalized, but you know, criminal sentences reversed, records expunged, the whole thing. We're way past that.
Hell yeah. I'm
Um,
glad you can go as far as that. That shows that you're really in tune with everything. And that makes me really excited. I don't know. I'm from Minnesota. I don't know if you heard about what happened here recently. We had
yes,
legal edibles by accident.
I know. I was like, oh, y'all are so dumb, but that's the greatest thing I've ever read. Yes.
Yeah, they did it intentionally. The strategy here was that if we kept it, on the DL down low, that
Hmm.
it would stay out of the mainstream media's eyes, which would
Hmm.
mean that a lot of the haters that hate it for no good reason
Hmm.
would be ignorant and they wouldn't be calling their politicians. Because I've had meetings with a lot of the Republican politicians here, and I'm not saying all Republicans hate weed. I, in fact, know Republicans who are very pro weed, and
Yeah.
it's just a lot of them are in private pro legalization, pro decriminalization, but
Hmm.
a lot of people just don't know the science behind cannabis use or the science
Yeah.
behind chemical addiction. So
Yes.
they act off that ignorance, and you can only make half-assed decisions if you only know half the facts. So
Right.
it was just really shocking, surprising that we actually had that happen. But I think, economically and in terms of business, it's going to be beneficial for everyone. And in terms
Yes.
of literally a food artist like yourself, do you think that would help you expand your business? Do you think that would help grow everything? Or what do you
I
think?
think it would grow the business to the point where it would probably take over a huge chunk of the business, honestly, because I'm not gonna lie, it's what we make is like dressed up stoner food. Like
Yes.
it's like super bougie stoner food. Like, there's I like Gucci, but I also really like Cheech and Chong if we're gonna like kind of, use those code words or whatever. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, that's funny. Well, that pretty much answers every question I had right now.
awesome.
Um, Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
It's
thank
been
you,
an
Jake.
absolute
Yeah,
delight.
yeah,
You are
absolutely.
an awesome person through and through, it sounds like.
Oh, well, thank you.
But
Nice.
yeah, that's so cool. I
Yeah.
am really glad to have gotten a little bit of your time. So
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you so much for talking with me. Email me your address and I'll ship you some of the goodies that never see the light of day outside of Charleston.
Oh my God. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, of course. No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I hope you have a great week. Once again,
Thank
thank you. I'll stay
you
in
too.
touch with everything, and
Awesome.
please keep on kicking, dude. You're kicking everyone's butt in the food
Oh,
world,
thank
it
you.
looks like.
Thank you so much.